Hi everybody. In this video I'm going to be talking about replacing all the rear suspension components on my 1979 Firebird Formula. Just a little background information. I bought this car from my brother in May of 2019, and except for normal wear and tear parts being replaced, it's still pretty much as it was when it came from the factory. It has the 301 cubic inch engine with a 4-barrel carburetor and the 4-speed manual transmission. I'm currently rebuilding a 400 cubic inch 4-barrel engine from my 1970 Grand Prix, which I will stick into this car in place of the 301 that's there now. Now, I never got to drive or even ride in a brand new 0-mile 1979 Firebird. As I am repairing or restoring this car, my goal is to get it back into brand new, off the assembly line, or maybe just a little bit better condition. I want to see what it was like to drive a brand new Firebird. But not just any Firebird. I want to drive the highest performance version, or like I said, maybe just a little bit better version of what was available from Pontiac in 1979. That said, when I'm looking for parts, I don't search for the highest performance aftermarket parts I can find. I don't want to make any major modifications to my car. I don't want to do any cutting. I don't want to do any welding. I don't want to drill any new holes. I look for sources, that sell original equipment manufacturer or maybe slightly better reproduction parts. I want exact fit parts that I can just bolt right in. So when I'm searching for parts, I enter the specs for my car and I see what was available and appropriate for that specific year, make, and model. When I enter the specs though, I'm entering specs for the highest performance version of the 79 Firebird, which was the Trans Am with the 400 cubic inch 4-barrel engine and 4-speed manual transmission, and also with the WS6 suspension. Works out well since I'll be sticking a 400 4-barrel into this car anyway. Alright, let's take a look at the parts that I replaced. The WS6 suspension was often touted as the best suspension package offered on any American car in 1979. It was even said to rival the suspension of some of the high-end European sports cars. My car, unfortunately, did not come with the WS6 suspension. So let's take a look again, a closer look at all the parts that I replaced. The shock absorbers got replaced with some KYP Excel-G shock absorbers. Those were from, I ordered those from Eaton Detroit Spring. There was the leaf springs, I replaced those. It's really important to know the parts that your car already has and what was available before you go ordering new parts. I ran into a situation quite a few times when I couldn't get the exact specs for what springs were in it, so I would go to a site, I would enter the specs for my car or for the Trans Am, and it would give me options of what springs I wanted. The options that I got from, let's see, where did I order these from? I ordered these from Classic Industries, and they gave me 3 options. They gave me springs with a 97-pound rating, a 127-pound rating, and I believe the third option was a 156-pound rating. I figured the 97-pound rating must have been what came on the base model Firebirds, and the 127 would be what came on the Trans Ams, and maybe the 150s would be what came on, were added performance if you wanted even more performance than what was offered for the factory. So I ordered a set of the 197-pound spring rating, and after searching and looking and getting paperwork from Pontiac Historical Services, what I learned was that the standard Firebird had springs with 89-pound ratings. And so I guess I'm hoping that I didn't go overboard here by getting springs that have a spring rating of 127 pounds. But you can see it should work, and you can see that these look like the original springs. You can see how worn the rubber bushings are. So hopefully these new springs will freshen everything up. The springs are mounted, and that's another thing. The mounting, all the bushing and the nuts and bolts are separate from the springs. When you order the springs, garbage man driving by. When you order the springs, you get the springs, but that's all you get. So I had to order a separate mounting kit, and the mounting kit I got from National Parts Depot. And the new mounting kit included the old shackles, which those are the shackle braces. These are the bushings that go in the shackles, and these are the shackle bolts. What also came with the mounting kit was the U-bolts, which go around the axle and mount the axle to the spring, as well as these T-nuts, which also mount the axle to the leaf spring. In addition to that, with the sway bar, I got a new sway bar, and that was another area where I should have used a little bit more research to find out exactly what I had and what was offered. The sway bar that was on the car is this one, and this one has a diameter of 5/8 of an inch, 0.625 inches. One of the weird things about this sway bar is that it has these bushings on it, and I can't find like the break in the bushing that most bushings have. For example, if you take a look at this, also the mounting bushing that goes along the sway bar, it's got this cut in it, the slit in it to get it mounted onto the sway bar. I don't see that slit or that cut anywhere in this bushing, which is strange. So I don't know how they got the bushing onto the sway bar. But anyway, you can take a look and you can see that it's old and it's worn out and it's cracked and it's out of shape. It's misshapen and everything. So along with the sway bar came the sway bar links. Again, you can take a look at that and you can see very old, probably original to the car. Very old. And those links go around this bushing and then attaches to a mount up in the top of the car. In fact, that goes to this mount, which also came new with the sway bar kit. So the bushing goes through that bolt and that mounts to the frame of the car. And then this bushing mounts on here, and then this bracket goes around it and attaches it to the anchor plate on the axle, which you'll see in a little bit. Again, this sway bar is 5/8 of an inch. So when I put in all the specs in my car, I got a whole bunch of different choices for the diameter of the sway bars. And it started at 5/8 of an inch, went to 6/8 of an inch, 7/8 of an inch, and up to, I think the largest one I saw offered was an inch. So again, I figured, well, the 5/8 of an inch one, that's what came on my formula. That must be the bottom level base sway bar that you get when you get a Firebird Formula. And I figured the 6/8 of an inch one was the upgrade with the WS6 Trans Am, and maybe the 7/8 one was, again, the next higher up if you wanted a little bit more performance than was offered from the factory. So I went with the 7/8, and what I really found was that it was the 6/8 one that was offered on the WS6 suspension. So again, I went one size higher than was offered on the WS6 suspension. So again, I hopefully didn't go overboard on that. Everything else, let's see, the only other things with these bolts, these are just eye bolts that go through here. That came with the suspension kit. I think I mentioned, what else did I get? I got the sway bar, I got the springs, I got the shocks, and I got the mounting kit. So yeah, again, the shocks were from Eaton Detroit Spring, which is odd that that's another thing that I found about ordering parts, is that these springs, these leaf springs, are actually manufactured by Eaton Detroit Spring, but I could get them cheaper by ordering them from Classic Industries instead of ordering them right from Eaton. On the other hand, the KYP shocks I got from Eaton Detroit Spring, and I could get them cheaper that way than ordering them from KYB or any of the Advance Auto or any of the auto parts stores. The mounting kit, showed you all of that. I came with that. And Another thing, when I ordered the sway bar kit, I saw that the new one was going to come with links, but the links didn't look anything like this. They had, well, they looked something like this, but they had a flat bottom and then a bracket that bolted up into it. So I went ahead, not knowing if those would work with my car, I went ahead and brought brand new exact copies of reproduction parts of those links. Well, turns out that the links that they sent me with the new sway bar kit fit perfectly, mount perfectly, and work perfectly. So I've got an extra set of sway bar links if anyone's looking for a pair. All right. The only other thing, some nuts and bolts came with the installation kit. These over here, these cage nuts came with the kit, and I will talk about those a little bit later when we talk about problems. So let's take a look under the car and see how this stuff all ended up mounting up. All right, you can see the new sway bar mounted in there. This one again is 7/8 of an inch. That went in pretty easily. All the stuff that was in there came out pretty easily. I mean, it was just, you're dealing with the normal rust that's on a car that's 40 years old, but it actually came out surprisingly easier than I thought it would. Everything would. I didn't have to use a torch on anything. I didn't have to cut anything. And just maybe get a bigger breaker bar to loosen some of the nuts and bolts. But other than that, everything came out just by hand. So you can see we'll start up here, and hopefully I can get far enough away so that this will focus. But you see the new shackles where with the leaf spring mounts in the rear of the car. So the kit came with everything: new nuts, new bolts, the side plates, the bushings that go in here. One thing is, if you're trying to do a precise job and get everything torqued to spec, finding the torque specs can be a little difficult. I just looked in my service manual for this car and it had all the specs. But getting a torque wrench up in there, because this is right next to the gas tank, getting a torque wrench up in there might be a little difficult. Those are torqued to 50 pound-feet if I remember correctly. Had to use a claw foot open-end wrench to mount to my torque wrench to get up there to actually torque that down. Coming down, let's see, coming down this way, you see that let's go over here, the sway bar is mounted. There's the new link again. You can see it's, let's see, hopefully you can see a little focus in there. You can see it mounts up there. New mounting brackets included in the sway bar kit. The new link was included in the kit. That just mounts up in there. Comes down, and there's the U-shaped bracket here with the brand new bushing. Coming down to here to where the leaf spring, oh, there's my new shock absorber, by the way. There's the KYP shock absorber. Again, just two bolts up there and a bolt down here, mounted really easily. Down here, the leaf spring, it's got this bolt and this bolt actually attached to the U-bolt that goes over the axle. You saw the old U-bolt, new U-bolts came with the kit, and that extends over the axle and comes down through this anchor plate, this thing here. And then the sway bar and this bolt holds the sway bar in, and it mounts to the axle as well. So you can see the axle there, you can see that bracket that's welded to the axle, and then the bolts go through, those T-bolts go through. These two nuts hold on the mount to the T-bolts, and again hold the sway bar on as well. Those all came out and went in pretty easily. The nice thing about it is the pads that they have, let's see if I can get a shot in there. Yeah, you can see the pad in there holding the spring. There's one on the bottom and there's one on top, and those are polyurethane pads. The replacements are polyurethane instead of the rubber original ones. But it's really nice because really the only thing that's holding the axle in this car is this plate, one of these plates on each side, and that holds the axles to the springs, and then the springs mount in the back and the rear, and that's what's holding your axle on. And it's really nice because they send you a variety of pads that might fit in here, and if you find the pad that has the right size mounting tab here, this polyurethane mounting tab on the bottom, and the right size mounting tab on the front or on the top, you line those up and make sure they're in their slots the way they need to be and they're positioned correctly. And then when you bolt everything back together, your axle is actually lined up the way it's supposed to be. You don't have to really worry about aligning the axle or that your thrust angle is going to be off or anything like that. Just get everything lined up the way it's supposed to be, bolt it down, torque it down, and it's all set. The biggest problems I had, and this is where those cage bolts come in a little bit, is up in the front mounting. Let's see if I can get the camera in here. So there's this eye bolt, or the bolt that goes through the eye of the front of the spring, and then it goes through the bracket and the spring, and then there's a bolt there, and a bolt there, and a bolt up in, you're not going to be able to see that, but there's a bolt up in there. So there's 3 bolts that hold that bracket onto the car, and those bolts bolt into the cage nuts that are inside the car. Now the cage nuts, I'm going to go take a look at those for a minute. We'll come back over here. The cage nuts came as part of the Leaf installation kit, and these are the ones that were sent to me. They're part of the National Parts Depot kit, but those nuts are only torqued to 29 pound-feet, and these were just destroyed even before it got anywhere close to 29 pound-feet. I mean, that's not what it's supposed to look like. That's not what it's supposed to look like at all. You can see it's deformed. There shouldn't be those threads showing through. The threads were almost poking through. All of them, all 6 of them that were included in the National Parts Depot kit were pretty much destroyed before they got anywhere close to being torqued to 29 pound-feet. So what I did was I ended up going to Napa and buying some ones that I made sure were heavy duty, and put the new ones in, and everything was all set. Also torquing those leaf springs down in front, you saw how little clearance there was for the eye bolt in there, and that one actually takes the most torque, the spring to the bracket up front. That takes 75 pound-feet it's supposed to be torqued to, and I couldn't find, or I didn't have a tool that would get me up into there to torque the nut where it had to be torqued, or even on this side, to get a torque wrench around there. So I just did the best I could, got it to where I hope 75 pound-feet was. I know it's good and tight. These bolts are all torqued down, and that's it. That's the new suspension on the rear of my car. I'm taking it out for testing today or tomorrow. I've got a G-force meter. I took a baseline test before when I still had all the old suspension parts on it, and now I've got something to compare it to. But that's it. Like I said, the hardest part was getting the old bolts off, and that wasn't even that hard. Otherwise, it was a pretty simple procedure. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down in the comments section. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching.